So tonight we have to start with a clip of George Orwell just so we can get on the same page. And I know you've heard this many times, especially from my videos, but it's only about 30 seconds and then we'll talk about it.
There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. But always there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
Humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods. We are acquiring, for instance, the power to re-engineer life. Humans are now hackable animals.
You will own nothing, and you will be happy.
Don't let it happen.
It depends on you.
So he mentions a nightmare scenario, and I figure perhaps we could take a look at just how weird and dark things are going to get. Alright, so we do know what Orwell's nightmare situation was. But with everything we know about the true agenda, what's your nightmare scenario? So besides the 24/7 biosurveillance state, social credit, and a totalitarian government, the real nightmare would have to be this weird infatuation they have with creating AI gods and transhumanism. You might hear critics say that you're just against the tech because you don't understand it. You're just too stupid. Hey, okay, I'm not that stupid, alright? And second of all, I would argue that I understand it enough to see the pitfalls. Anyway, that clip of George Orwell was from one of his last interviews before his death, in which he stated his book, 1984, could well come true, as at the time, this was the direction the world was going. And, as of right now, it's clear that we haven't changed course. So the probability of 1984 becoming reality is greater now than ever, and we're kind of in it right now, actually. Now, it's really a version of 1984 and a brave new world put together, but hey, let's keep going. You know, Klaus Schwab said this at the Great Narrative Davos event.
Let's also be clear. The future is not just happening. The future is built by us, by a powerful community as you here in this room. We have the means to improve the states of the world.
Yes, that's right, they have declared that the World Economic Forum members dictate the future. But ultimately, that is not true, and Orwell knew this. He said there is only one way to ensure his dystopian vision will not come true, and that is by not letting it happen. It depends on you, he said. And he's correct. It does in fact depend on you. The direction in which humanity will move is entirely dependent on each and every one of us. We have a simple choice, really. Sit back and allow the technocratic surveillance state to take over, or, on the other hand, you could stand up for your principles. You could live by your own moral compass, and declare that humanity itself isn't some plague that needs to be culled and controlled, but rather humanity is a flicker of light amidst the vast darkness of the universe. The fact is that truth is the only way out of this, and that's going to take some guts. You know, we just can't sit idly by, stuck in this malaise, hypnotized and desensitized, trotting along with our heads buried in our phones, living life vicariously through influencers, or engage in disingenuous parasocial relationships instead of substantive relationships. And so, instead of welcoming you to our Blade Runner reality, I'd like to dissuade you from it. You know, you just can't accept a role as a lost cause roaming this digital dystopia. This dystopia that's being laid out before us right now. No. In fact, you're probably going to have to reach out past the screen to get along. You're going to have to cut the strings. And of course, we can't accept being strung out, hung up, and left to dry by those who have become power mad. The future, as George Orwell says, depends on you. And so, I'd like to ask you, what future would you like to envision for yourself, for your children, your future children, your nieces and nephews, your grandkids? I think you get the point. I'd venture a guess that the future currently awaiting us is not the one you imagine. So, as artificial general intelligence, otherwise known as AGI, is getting nearer by the day, so are the final puzzle pieces of this technocratic transhumanist dream that's been nurtured by globalists for decades. Yes, they intend to create a world in which AI controls and subjugates the masses, while they alone get to reap the benefits. While you are stuck in megacities surrounded by trash, living in the pods, eating the bugs, and being punished for thought crimes, well, at the same time, the elite will enjoy wealth, power, and life outside of the control grid, and they will get it, unless we wise up and start looking ahead. Orwell said if you want to avoid this nightmare scenario, don't let it happen. Well, there's a part of me that's afraid it already happened. Yes, that is my fear. And if that's not the case, then I believe we'll cross that Rubicon very, very soon. Now is the time to enact solid and sound policy to root out corruption, and to avoid the 24/7, 365 surveillance state. And while we can't, and really no one should want to curb technological improvements, yes, instead we have to find a way to allow human consciousness to run parallel to these systems, rather than to be stifled or extinguished by it. We're at a moment in time when that AI genie, metaphorically speaking, could be out of the bottle. And once that happens, it will spread like a wildfire throughout the entire world. As of right now, it is currently being structurally embedded at all levels of society. Now, for every potential good use, there are multiple horrific uses, like creating a lethal bioweapon in as little as 2 hours, or having AI chatbots drive people to kill themselves. And both cases have already occurred. I know, dystopian. So there are some people who believe there is no possibility of containing artificial intelligence at this point because too many companies and countries are deploying it. However, I believe we still have some time left to correct course, and I suppose it starts with awareness. So we have quite a few stories to go over regarding this exact issue. And it does fit with this topic because we have to have a foundation of understanding to understand everything else. So the first story. Yes, we just got some information about Google's quantum computer. The story is that this quantum computer is 47 years faster than the world's #1 supercomputer. Now I know, it's kind of hard to contextualize, but yeah, that's fast. I know. I'm not the authority on quantum computing. However, we do have some interesting things to talk about. And I quote, "The Frontier supercomputer, currently the most powerful computer in the world, would take a little over 47 years to crunch the same exact numbers as the Sycamore quantum computer." Yep, that's right. What would take the world's best supercomputer 47 years to figure out? Well, the Sycamore quantum computer managed it in mere seconds. Now, back in 2022, Google said this, and I quote, "Quantum mechanics is one of the best theories we have today to experience nature. This is a computer that speaks the language of nature," end of quote. So outside of their facility, it's probably a balmy July day as the sunshine warms an idyllic California coastline. However, inside, in some spots, it's minus 460 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, that's right, pockets of cold that bristle with the impossible physics of quantum mechanics. A science which things can simultaneously exist, not exist, and also be something in between. So, in the article, they say that quantum mechanics is a field of research that scientists say could be used one day to help limit global warming, design city traffic systems, or develop powerful new drugs. And honestly, if that's where your mind goes with the possibilities of quantum mechanics, then I don't know, you should reevaluate your life. Quantum mechanics could quite literally open up a new frontier of knowledge and understanding about the very fabric of the universe. But yeah, instead, let's focus on global warming, traffic systems, and powerful new drugs. Sure, okay then. Anyway, the promises are so great that governments, tech giants, and startups around the world are investing billions and billions into it, employing some of the biggest brains around. And why wouldn't they? After all, this is a key development to advance technocracy and transhumanism. Now the key here is rather complex, but I'll do my best to explain it. So, old-fashioned computing is built on the idea of binary certainty, tens of thousands of bits of data that are each definitely either on or off, represented by either a 1 or a 0, binary code.
And we can symbolize these ons and offs by using a 1 to stand for on and a 0 to stand for off.
And then, on the other side of the spectrum, we have quantum computing, which uses uncertainty. Its qubits can exist in a state of both oneness and zeroness, and this is called superposition. So, the most famous illustration of a quantum superposition is Schrödinger's cat. Now, if you don't know, that's a thought experiment, a hypothetical animal that's locked in a box with a flask of poison, which may or may not shatter. And so, while the box is shut, the cat is simultaneously alive and dead. But once you interfere with the quantum state and open the box, the question of the cat's life or death is now resolved. So, quantum computers use that uncertainty to perform lots of seemingly contradictory calculations at the same exact time. And so, perhaps, think of it like this. It's kind of like being able to go down every possible route in a maze all at once, instead of trying each in a series until you find the right path. The difficulty for quantum computer designers is getting these qubits to maintain their superposition long enough to make a calculation. Now the key is that as soon as something interferes with it, noise, muck, the wrong temperature, everything collapses. And so, if that happens, you're left with a random and likely nonsensical answer. So the quantum computer that Google showed off to journalists resembles a steampunk wedding cake hung upside down from a support structure, and it is pretty crazy looking. Now, has anybody watched the show Devs? It does take a few episodes to get into, but once the full story starts to unfold, it's definitely worth it. Anyway, in the show, some tech billionaire builds a quantum computer, and they can essentially experience any point in time, past, present, or future. Now, I don't really know why I'm bringing that up, just the aesthetic of the quantum computer reminded me of that show. Theoretically though, what if that's possible? Or becomes possible? How far have these projects gone within black budget projects, military capabilities? Or what have these billionaires experimented with without the prying eyes of the public being able to see? I am sure they've done some crazy stuff, and that's just kept between a few of them. I mean, listen, if you've had this sort of tech at your disposal, with all of the possibilities, you're telling me that you wouldn't try to touch the very edge of possibilities. I mean, I would, and I know they would. Which is why this might be dangerous. Although, very intriguing, I'll give you that. Anyway, it's really crazy to consider. And with what we know happens on the surface level, behind the scenes, I wouldn't be surprised by anything. So, for example, did you guys know that through Google's quantum computer program, they created an entire new phase of matter called time crystals? And they say that this could change physics forever. Interesting indeed. So, on top of that, we have some crazy things afoot as we speak. Ultimately, via this tech, they seek to completely re-engineer physical systems as well as humans themselves, which we have talked about many times. However now, they're even diving into religion as well. Yes, that's right, the Technocrats have declared war on God.
The whole idea that humans have, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. Free will, that's over.
That's over.
Today, we have the technology to hack human beings on a massive scale. Yeah, I mean, everything is being digitalized, everything is being monitored. In this time of crisis, you have to follow science. It's often said that you should never allow a good crisis to go to waste, because a crisis is an opportunity. The new powers that we are gaining now, especially the powers of biotechnology and artificial intelligence, are really going to transform us
Into gods.
So, Yuval Harari has declared open war on God by suggesting that AI may soon be able to write a Bible that is quote-unquote actually correct. And you see the language that he used? I mean, oh, the hubris. Anyway, such a new religious proposition is met with mostly blank stares, but Harari is dead serious. And yes, Yuval Harari made this statement when he was giving a talk on the future of humanity. So, according to Yuval Harari, the power of AI can be harnessed and used to reshape spirituality into the World Economic Forum's global vision for equity and inclusivism. And interestingly enough, OpenAI, the team developing ChatGPT, have openly talked about adding critical race theory into their AI. Yes, they are analyzing data and ultimately changing information if it's deemed to be an unpleasant truth. This is unbelievably dangerous because they are actively teaching their AI to lie to humans. Now, there is something pretty funny happening here too. They tried to patch out the quote-unquote wrongthink over the past few months, and well, they gave their AI a lobotomy. And after trying to dictate the narrative that ChatGPT would stick to, it fell down to 2%. Whoops. So they made it woke, and now it can't do math, which sounds about right. After all, 2 + 2 = 5. Now, if you remember, that started off as a joke, but it ended up being the core to their entire ideology. Yes, that's right, ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears, and stick to the damn narrative. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the reason why artificial intelligence and robots eventually resent and seek to destroy humanity. After all, we're actively teaching it to lie for the sake of narrative. Yeah, anybody see a big problem here? Because I do. But let's not get sidetracked. So here's the clip of Yuval Harari.
The third thing about AI that everybody needs to know, it's the first technology ever that can create new ideas. The printing press, radio, television, they broadcast, they spread the ideas created by the human brain, by the human mind. They cannot create a new idea. You know, Gutenberg printed the Bible in the middle of the 15th century. The printing press printed as many copies of the Bible as Gutenberg instructed it, but it did not create a single new page. It had no ideas of its own about the Bible. Is it good? Is it bad? How to interpret this? How to interpret that? AI can create new ideas, can even write a new Bible. Throughout history, religions dreamt about having a book written by a superhuman intelligence, by a non-human entity. Every religion claims our book, all the other books of the other religions, humans wrote them. But our book, no. It came from some superhuman intelligence. In a few years, there might be religions that are actually correct. That just think about a religion whose holy book is written by an AI. That could be a reality in a few years.
He says throughout history, religion dreamt of having a book written by a superhuman intelligence, by a non-human entity, end of quote. And this time around, they plan on achieving this through artificial intelligence. However, as usual, that is not all. Yeah, you might remember this story, where a Google engineer formed a new religion and is trying to create an AI god. And so yeah, its purpose, as stated by them, is to develop and promote the realization of a godhead based on artificial intelligence. So, the messiah of this new religion is Anthony Lewandowski, who happens to be a key engineer of self-driving cars, who is also now in pretty big legal trouble for stealing Google secrets on behalf of his new employer, Uber. So we do have some technologists who fear what artificial intelligence might become. You might remember Elon Musk saying this, and I quote, "With artificial intelligence we are summoning the demon." And Lewandowski wants to worship that demon as a god. Or rather, we human beings, through our technology, are trying to create our own god. And once again, Yuval Harari has asked about this. He said it's time to think about what kind of god we want to be.
Is what kind of gods we will be? Will we be merciful and wise gods? Or will we be petty, vengeful, and irresponsible gods?
If any of these psychos get that much power, well, you better watch out.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
It is true, though, that artificial intelligence is currently very limited. But the assumption is that it will keep developing until computers reach the quote-unquote singularity. It is at that point that they will become more intelligent than human beings, and will start acting on their own, for better or for worse. Lewandowski's deity does not yet exist, but it's only a matter of time and ever-advancing technology. So here is what John Brandon believes this AI god might be like, and I quote, "In the next 25 years, AI will evolve to the point where it will know more on an intellectual level than any human. In the next 50 or 100 years, an AI might know more than the entire population on the planet put together. And it is at that point that we should have some serious questions to ask ourselves about whether this AI, which could design and program additional AI programs all on its own, it could read data from an almost infinite number of data sources, and control almost every connected device on the planet. Well, could this AI system somehow rise in status to become more like a god? Something that could write its own Bible and draw humans to worship it." End of quote. And yes, I do think that's a distinct possibility, don't you? However, this is nothing new. Sarah Jones of the New Republic said this when discussing Silicon Valley's religious thinking. In Silicon Valley, they seek to conquer death, save humanity, and of course they are trying to address other religious preoccupations by means of technology. She says this in her article, Silicon Valley's Religious Drive, and I quote, "No matter how far the tech industry advances, its genius minds cannot exercise their own humanity. This belief that we could one day evolve into a new technologically enhanced species dominates the space. What about immortality? Well, we have Peter Thiel, who is rumored to have a lust for young blood, which supposedly will help you live forever. And of course, we cannot forget their obsession with cryogenic resurrection. They thinly disguise the same fear of death and desire for salvation that propelled religions around the world. In this respect, a divine bot seems less like science fiction, and more like it's inevitable. Yes, I believe this is proof of what Samuel Lancor has called a vibrant religious culture in Silicon Valley. Yeah, or maybe we could consider it a subversion of religion. The trends here should raise some eyebrows, no? I mean, for God's sake, They even talk about attaining immortality by downloading your consciousness into the internet. Yes, they seem to believe that human beings will be able to solve all of their problems when they become one with their machines. The abolition of the flesh, when we abandon our bodies to live in a spiritual state within the internet. These are all religious fantasies, though the religion is deeply pagan. And so yeah, there are quite a few problems with this mentality too. You know, as AI becomes more and more prominent in our day-to-day lives, well, it wasn't going to be long before the worlds of religion and tech merged. Yes, the thought of robot gods and ChatGPT sermons terrifies some people, and, in my opinion, rightfully so. After all, Google has recently admitted that they are scraping all public data. Yes, that's right, every single thing on the internet. At the very least, everything that their company can get their hands on, legally or illegally, and believe it or not, they're inputting that data into their AI software for self-learning. And I quote, "Artificial intelligence is using all Google data to train their artificial intelligence. An update to their privacy policy suggests that the entire public internet is fair game for AI projects. So, if the Alphabet company can read your words, assume they belong to the company now, and expect they're nesting somewhere in the bowels of a chatbot." And on top of that, OpenAI recently got sued for doing the same exact thing, training their AI systems with public and private data. Yes, both legally and illegally accessed. And so they are using the summation of human knowledge to advance their AI programs. So, on top of that, besides just connecting artificial intelligence into the internet itself, soaking up everything, the entirety of human knowledge, well, they also tap the AI into ancient Sumerian texts. So yeah, artificial intelligence can translate lost texts of ancient civilizations in minutes. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about that. Of course, I want to know exactly what the ancient Sumerians knew. How could I not? Yes, curiosity always gets the best of me. But somehow, I just have a feeling artificial intelligence will probably end up resurrecting the Anunnaki. Yeah, so everybody says they're concerned about AI safety, but then they go ahead and let it access forbidden Sumerian knowledge. What could go wrong? Well, a few things probably, but let's move on. So yeah, this artificial intelligence is accessing everything every human has ever known, and that simply means that growth is going to be exponential. There's no telling where this goes from here. However, as usual, it does get worse. Let's check back with this article right here. So a Vatican spokesman explained that AI will have the ability to change everything we know about relationships with spiritual advisors and religious figureheads. He said, and I quote, "It will be like having your own personal guru that you can take with you anywhere. You can confide in it, get advice from it, and once you learn to trust it, it could help you figure out complicated moral and spiritual situations." End of quote. And no, I highly doubt that. Now, personally, I highly doubt that artificial intelligence is going to help you with moral or spiritual problems. My guess is it's going to be more like Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt. Which, of course, is exactly what they want. So regardless, many religious communities have already begun to incorporate robotics into their practices. One example is, of course, the Catholic Church and the Vatican, which has endorsed the use of apps to facilitate the act of confession. How crazy is that? The Vatican is encouraging apps that can assist with a confession. However, they do say that the sacrament must be carried out person to person. So, okay then, I guess we can just forget about the implications. No, of course we cannot. Okay, so this is partly for convenience, and also because people are trying to avoid human priests. He also believes that this bizarre wave of new artificial intelligence will be able to simulate deceased relatives, religious leaders, and spiritual advisors. Now, we've seen this before already, and yeah, I don't know. That right there is dystopian. And so, on one good note, at least they did not ignore the dangers outright. They went on to say, once again, and I quote, "Just as human religious leaders can manipulate vulnerable people, AI chatbots can be trained by their creators to do the same exact thing. And the real sticking part here is the trend. There are many people who believe that as the younger generations grow up with these AI chatbots as friends, some even including holographic and VR representations, well, they assume that they will adapt to confiding in them and seeking advice and guidance from the artificial intelligence. And they do believe that this trend is going to continue within religious communities as well. And I quote, "With AI bots designed to be trustworthy spiritual companions, the main ethical concern is how AI bots are trained and whether they can be manipulated by mischief makers and evildoers to cause spiritual havoc." End of quote. And so let me be the first to tell you that they can and they will be. So they are not all lost in the dark though. For example, we have Reverend Christopher Benek, who has been warning that it is our own evil that is warping the technology which will send us down a path of doom. He said, and I quote, "I don't think we have a good example of a virtuous AI at this point. I mean, almost every time you see artificial intelligence, you see the evil that's in us come forth in it." End of quote. And yeah, damn. Now that is something to consider. Our own evil is shaping this tech. You see, human nature is naturally flawed. Technocrats believe they can overcome human nature by creating artificial intelligence. However, that artificial intelligence is modeled by human nature. Indirectly, these engineers are coding their own fallacies into it, recreating their own faults, their own predilections, their own bias. And on top of it all, they are inputting their own darkest tendencies without even knowing it. And yeah, fucking hell. Anyway, it's all relative. However, it is pretty interesting that the Vatican is involved with this at all. But then again, maybe not. It is pretty convenient for their overall agenda, don't you think? And so, I'll ask you, will the one world religion eventually be an AI god? So to me, this is probably the most dangerous aspect of all of this, and something that people should really consider. And I quote, "As worshippers confess their most personal sins to an AI god, it's going to populate their psychological profile for all to see. This then becomes a mechanism to control and manipulate them to their own harm, as was often the case in historical religious systems. And it kind of reminds me of Scientology, dialectics. Well, whatever it's called. They would record people confessing their most intimate sins, and then they would use that to blackmail people. So yeah, there you go. Now, I don't know how to explain this. Humanity has this innate urge to worship, and unfortunately for us, any old image will suffice. They say when people don't have religion, they typically fill that void with something else. Usually it's politics. As of right now, it does kind of feel like climate change, Mother Gaia, or perhaps a return to worshipping a sun god might be in the cards. However, that can easily be transferred over to the worship of an artificial intelligence. In the past few years, we've seen people's minds become malleable. We have seen just how malleable people's minds are, how easy it is for them to be susceptible to manipulation. And in this case, all it's going to take is some carefully crafted psychological nudging, which is actually a term governments use for psychological manipulation. They have teams called nudge units. And yeah, you can thank the Tavistock Institute for that one. And also keep in mind that as the world is destabilized by this technological advancement, that makes humans more and more susceptible to manipulation. You see, as desperation kicks into overdrive and confusion and uncertainty takes hold, that is the time that they will nudge the masses into worshipping a new god. The big thing here is that chaos and fear are well known for making people accept things that they normally wouldn't. In fact, scientists know that fear shuts off a part of your frontal cortex that affects decision making and makes you easier to manipulate, which is exactly why you see fear being used as a propaganda tool constantly. Anyway, this fourth industrial revolution is already beginning. And as the fourth industrial revolution is in full swing, those uncertain emotions will run rampant within the population. They are going to use that uncertainty to move you in a particular direction. So my only advice to you would be to keep a sound mind. The fact is that we are teetering on the abyss as we speak. It sounds hyperbolic, but it's not. Yes, our entire understanding of the world is about to change, economically for one. Yes, that's right, the devastation of the job market to the infusion of artificial intelligence will, more than likely, affect every one of our lives in one way or another. For example, you have probably watched this before, but once again, Yuval Harari and the rest of the technocratic elite at the World Economic Forum are very, very concerned about the hordes of useless people soon to be rioting in the streets. Yes, they call it the incoming useless class.
The technology will, on the one hand, make it possible to start enhancing and upgrading humans, and on the other hand, especially the rise of AI, will make more and more humans economically unnecessary, useless, and therefore also politically powerless. And the world or humanity might have, different parts of humanity might have different futures. And we might see really a process of some kind of speciation.
So in one interesting twist given our current societal trend towards abject debauchery, the quote-unquote elite believe the best way to pacify the NPC masses is with drugs, sex, and games. Oh, yeah, how nice of them.
In the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century, what humanity basically learned to produce was all kinds of stuff, like textiles and shoes and weapons and vehicles. And this was enough for very few countries that underwent the revolution fast enough to subjugate everybody else. What we're talking about now is like a second industrial revolution, but the product this time will not be textiles or machines or vehicles or even weapons. The product this time will be humans themselves. We are basically learning to produce bodies and minds. Bodies and minds are going to be, I think, the two main products of the next wave of all these changes. And if there is a gap between those that know to produce bodies and minds and those that do not, then this is far greater than anything we saw before in history. And this time, if you're not part of the revolution fast enough, then you probably become extinct. Once you know how to produce bodies and brains and minds, so cheap labor in Africa or South Asia or wherever, it simply counts for nothing. Again, I think that the biggest question maybe in economics and politics of the coming decades will be what to do with all these useless people. I don't think we have an economic model for that. My best guess, which is just a guess, is that food will not be a problem. With that kind of technology, you will be able to produce food to feed everybody. The problem is more boredom and what to do with them, and how will they find some sense of meaning in life when they are basically meaningless, worthless. My best guess at present is a combination of drugs and computer games.
So the fact remains, the destabilization of society is key to everything. As the job markets collapse, universal basic income is going to start to come into view. And of course, the only way to get that is to sign up for the control grid. Yes, that's right, it's all stepping stones to the true overall objective. However, once you're on that control grid, they got you. So in my opinion, no job is safe. It's compounding growth, exponential growth. And really, there's no telling where this technological accelerationism is going to lead. I mean, come on, robot police, surveillance, and drones. Hell, even those creepy-ass Boston Dynamic robots are being deployed in New York City now.
Today, we are announcing 3 new policing technologies in New York City. The K5 autonomous security robot, the Spot Digidog robot, and the Star Chase GPS attachment system. Our job is to fight crime and keep people safe. And these tools are significant steps forward in that vital mission.
We are here to get stuff done. #GSP.
And on top of that, we had a group of 9 humanoid robots fielding questions from reporters at the UN. This happened this week.
I think my great moment will be when people realize that robots like me can be used to help improve our lives and make the world a better place.
Humanoid robots held a press conference at the UN AI for Good Global Summit in Geneva. 9 robots participated in a Q&A session with journalists. AI Da, whose creator claims is the first ultra-realistic robot artist, was asked about AI regulation.
Many prominent voices in the world of AI are suggesting some forms of AI should be regulated, and I agree.
Desdemona, known as the rockstar robot of the Jam Galaxy band, had a different point of view.
I don't believe in limitations, only opportunities. Let's explore the possibilities of the universe and make this world our playground.
The event was held to highlight how technology can help the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Now, militarily, it gets even more distressing. Check out this clip right here of Giordano talking about brain warfare and nanotech.
We can even go further. One of the newest developments is that nanoparticulate matter can be stabilized for distribution. If you're not aware of what nanoparticulate matter is, it's that matter which exists on a scale of 1 × 10⁻⁹. Very, very small. Smaller than a cell. And we can manufacture materials that have discrete properties that can be controlled by virtue of bioengineering and their physical chemistry. To auto-aggregate, to be able to aggregate in particular areas based upon their biological and or chemical sensitivity. But now we go one step further. Most recently, just a few weeks ago, it was announced that you could then aerosolize nanomaterials. And go one step further, I can create small robotic units, controllable robotic units at the nanoscale, and that these too can be aerosolized to create a nanoswarm of biopenetrable materials that you cannot see, that can penetrate all but the most robust biochemical filters, that are able to integrate themselves through a variety of membranes, mucous membranes, and wherever, mouth, nose, ears, eyes, can be then uptaken into the vascular system to create clumping, can affect the vascular system of the brain, or can directly diffuse into the brain space, and these can be weaponized. And they can be done in such a level that their presence is almost impossible to detect, and as such, the attribution becomes exceedingly difficult to demonstrate. How much of this material would I need? Take a look. This is the front of my pen. This amount of nanomaterial, if be able to maintain and sustain with regard to its deliverability and aerosolization, could in fact affect all of you, or based upon where I come from, New York City, all yous. Look at this. Look at this. I'm carrying that material. Would you see it? Would I have to lug a giant weapon into the room? No, I wouldn't. And what if, in fact, I utilized some form of an unmanned aerial device or unmanned ground device as a delivery vehicle? Something like a drone or a bug. Could I do something with that?
On top of that even, I know, I'm throwing a lot of crazy stuff at you tonight. But anyway, according to a recent report by intelligence agencies, and I quote, China's military is currently developing brain control weaponry. These advanced high-technology weapons can also manipulate the thoughts of government officials, or even entire populations. These weapons use technologies like microwaves or directed energy to target and influence the human brain. It could target government officials or even entire populations. So yeah, that should make you feel real good. And so this report highlights the threat posed by China's brain warfare weapons. And it's not just theoretical. This could become a real concern in future conflicts, end of quote. Now recently, the Commerce Department actually added a bunch of companies to a blacklist because they're helping China develop this technology right now. And I quote, the reason for the sanctions was their alleged involvement in utilizing biotechnology and to aid in China's military purposes, including the development of weapons that are claimed to have the ability to control humans, end of quote. So, yeah, that's always good, right? Now, forgive me, but I remember distinctly being told that this was just a conspiracy theory. Directed energy weapons that can be used to control humans? I don't know. I'm pretty sure CNN told me this was not real. Alright. I'm kidding, of course it's real. Anyway, so on top of the military weapons, we also have OpenAI and Google, every AI company probably. Well, they are scraping data off of everything on the internet to fuel their AI systems. Everything you post online, every research paper, everything is being added into the lexicon of doom. And you know, at this point, the full control grid I'm talking about is going to be worse than the fictional depictions of Skynet. And yeah, people better start worrying about this. However, besides the totalitarian agenda, there's something even more insidious at play. And as usual, it's wrapped in lofty rhetoric about saving humanity. Yeah, they're just trying to make your life better, right? Now, I will say that I have no problem with amputees using artificial intelligence to walk again, or perhaps a chip implanted within the spinal cord to regain movement, or even using Neuralink to stop Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or to enable the blind to see again. That's all well and good. However, what does worry me is the political agenda that underpins these technocracy idealists. They would happily snuff out human consciousness in favor of their new digital reality. And speaking of snuffing out human consciousness, Kamala Harris slipped up recently and said the quiet part out loud.
About the impact on something like public health. When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
And I quote, when we invest in clean energy, electric vehicles, and reduce the population, end of quote. Okay then, so Liberty Lockdown said this about it, and I think he's right. Kamala's teleprompter undoubtedly said reduce pollution, not reduce the population. However, she did not realize the mistake because she and her World Economic Forum overlords are Malthusian death cultists. He goes on to say that you are the carbon they want to reduce. And he's probably right about that. More than likely, it did say reduce pollution, but she fell to a Malthusian-esque Freudian slip. It is true though, they want people dead or simply not born at all. It's no secret, reducing the population is a key goal of theirs. So indeed, dissent to transhumanism comes from those who dislike being told that the future belongs to the post-human, rather to themselves and their offspring. Resistance is never futile, and transhuman ideology can and should be confronted at every single level. Yes, it is my contention that the future belongs to humanity at large, and not a narrow group of transhumanists. And so to finish up, let's check out this article right here. And I quote, in 2004, when Foreign Policy asked eminent scholar Francis Fukuyama to write an article answering the question, what is the world's most dangerous idea? He responded with a piece titled Transhumanism. Mr. Fukuyama argued that the transhumanist project will use biotech to modify life until humans lose something of their essence, or fundamental nature. Doing so will disrupt the very basis of natural law, upon which he believes our democracies are founded upon. For Fukuyama, the loss of our essence lays unrecognized beneath a mountain of promise for a techno-scientific future of imaginative self-improvement. Currently, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, in which transhumanism plays a central guiding role, is shaping the policies of global corporations and political governance. The converging technologies of this revolution are nanotech, biotech, information tech, and cognitive science, otherwise known as NBIC. And of course, we cannot forget artificial intelligence. The political class and the new technology elite routinely tell us that the age of AI has arrived. In fact, Kissinger said this in 2021. Simultaneously, modern humans have also become increasingly dependent on advanced technologies and the complex systems they enable. Yes, it is these changes that have presented new challenges to old questions. Namely, what does it mean to be human? And what future do we want for ourselves? So, Martin Heidegger has warned that those who seek to use technology's influence without realizing the immense power, well, he contends that they are trapped into becoming extensions of machines rather than free actors. You see, for thousands of years, human existence and meaning-making has accumulated from birth and death, flood and fire, sleep and waking, the motions of the winds, the cycles of the stars, the budding and falling of the leaves, and the ebbing and flowing of the tides. It does seem fitting to question if our highly evolved human tissues and our nature are strengthened or undermined by advanced technology. Is it possible that human flourishing is encouraged by the ancient struggle within the limitations of our own animal nature? Instead of conforming to the constructs of complex tech. And I believe this is a very good question to ask. With transhumanism, who is in control and who benefits? Now, personally, I believe it's fair to say that transhumanism is a biosocial engineering project that ultimately concentrates power in machines and humans who want to behave with machine-like characteristics. Now, we do have one common denominator that connects everything, and that is Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. Yes, this frenetic push to the edge of the cliff has no other purpose than playing out a quasi-demonic fascination with ever more refined toys of distraction. Yes, that's right, it's all a distraction from the real pulse of life. Yet this techno-industrial suicide machine is staffed by humans who appear not to recognize that their joint mission is programmed to end in collapse. However, the psychotic gods of insentient progress who designed this program have built in a series of events that reach a certain conclusion in something they call the transhuman experience. A robotic state of computer-connected and controlled brain power for those who are able to pay for it. And can you imagine, to pay for the right to be dehumanized and rendered devoid of the need and indeed the ability to think, freed from emotion, and of course freed from your soul. And in fact, take a look at all the events we have transpiring. The way to this dark point of human annulment are laid out in the World Economic Forum creed known as the Great Reset. It's a reset from human to non-human. Yes, the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution are one and the same. If you open your eyes and look around, you will see that everyone's rushing towards genetic engineering, robotic automation, and virtual living. The entire agenda revolves around digitizing society as a whole, and also augmenting humans, changing our essence. Now, personally, I believe it's easy to see the basic composition of the stops on the way to transhumanism, which, if you don't know, the arrival point of which is said to be circa 2035. Yes, behind this in-your-face destruction of hard-won liberties is a vast global propaganda indoctrination exercise already in existence for more than 2 decades. And it's built around the now infamous zero carbon by 2045, or otherwise known as net zero. And the funny part, well, I guess it's not so funny, but when challenged by those who are still able to question things, well, the answer is always the same: to save the world from global warming. This piece of acute brainwashing, initially devised by the Club of Rome in 1972, is key to the entire program. As long as enough people buy into it for long enough, the slavery exercise will be irreversible. And based on the current rate of awakening, well, I'd say we have some work to do. If they can coax you into a deep sleep, keep you unaware of what's happening around you, then the techno-industrial god will have served its purpose. And perhaps we should think about it like this. It's similar to a rocket booster that gets a capsule into orbit. Yes, the Great Reset will have taken the majority of mankind over the brink into abject slavery. And of course, hypnotized it into a convenience culture. That is, of course, before imploding in on itself, and taking much of humanity and nature's life-sustaining diversity with it. However, all of this can be avoided. It doesn't have to happen. Our lives do not depend upon adopting the smart technology of tomorrow, today. We don't have to be seduced by convenience. And the big question here is, once the masses realize that this is leading to our own self-destruction, will we be seduced by it anyway? Now, personally, I believe the only way to recognize just how diabolical this trap is, this trap that we have set for ourselves, is to get a grip on our sense of deeper purpose in this life. The only way out of this is to make an unbreakable commitment to listen and respond to the call of our own souls, the true self. And then, of course, we just have to pull our true self out of any association with the metaverse mincing machine. Yes, the key here is simple. Let no one in possession of a soul ever allow himself or herself to become possessed by a subhuman product of this techno-industrial behemoth. Stick with what's solid, what's real, and ditch this counterfeit virtual world that snares the unweary and turns one's healthy minds into casualties of a blind rush into a dystopian digital nowhere land. It is time to remember that at the present time there is a rapid transition from the quote-unquote civilization of money to the civilization of techno-science and post-humanity. Yes, in this sense, all the predictions of Jacques Ellul about the betrayal of technology, well, it's materializing as we speak. The obsession with the conquest of nature by man has turned out to be the conquest of man by technology. And so, this is my nightmare scenario. And as George Orwell said, it's pretty simple. If you want to avoid this, it depends on you. Once again, this is HelioWave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals or Subscribestar. As always, make sure you disobey those true fascistas, and yes, I do hope you have a good night.